Alright, Patrick, get your wallet out. Okay, voter ID lesson number 1. You see someone going to the polls when you see them drop their wallet. That may have their voter ID in it. Patrick, drop the wallet. Now, what do you do? Oh, well, excuse me, sir, but I do believe you dropped your wallet. It may contain information that will help you vote in this election.
Doesn't look familiar to me.
What? I just saw you drop it. Here, you are going to need it to vote.
No, I don't need it to vote. I think voter ID is racist.
Okay, this wallet is yours, and all these laws are trying to do is make sure that the poll workers can know who you are, and also we can stop illegal voting.
No, I don't think I'll need that wallet. You know that voter ID is racist because minorities can't get an ID, right?
Okay, let me put it in a different way. Aren't you Patrick Starr?
Yep.
And this is your ID that you need for multiple things, like buying alcohol, buying a new house, and opening up a bank account, right?
Yep.
You also need a voter ID to fly on an airplane, and even buy a cell phone.
That all makes sense to me.
Then you should be able to vote with ID.
No, that's racist.
Ah, you dim bulb! Vote with ID or I'll rip your arms off! What's going on, everybody? It's Kyle Dockery with the Debunked Docket. We are here with our very third episode of the Debunked Docket. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that you are excited to be here as well. So, last week I decided to take a little break from politics, and I wish that everything would have just been calm in the news world. Maybe the media could have gone on vacation, you know? We could have sent them to Antarctica where they would stay there forever and never come back. That would have been helpful. My main hope was that last week that there would be no controversies, no craziness, no political wildness, no nothing. And everything would just be calm. However, I knew that the odds of that happening were very, very small. Because of course, there was something crazy and controversial that did happen. And it sent my brain into a whirlwind of craziness. Now, if there's one thing that drives me crazy about the media, it is when they flat out lie to you about a story, but pass it off as the 100% truth. When this happens, people start to believe it, because they will say, oh, well, CNN told me that it was true, so it means that it is 100% true. Then, the legit truth comes out, and the media will call them conspiracy theorists, and the lie just gets bigger and bigger. Then it turns out that the media can no longer hide the lie, and holes start coming into their arguments. And that's when people like me have to come out and debunk it. This, of course, all stems from the new voting law that was passed in Georgia. And when it was passed, everyone lost their minds about it. Because the law is apparently very, very racist, and it is also very, very terrible. Apparently, this law is so bad that people are comparing it to Jim Crow. You know, when black people couldn't even vote at all. Or if they could vote, they had a very, very hard time. Some people have even called this law worse than Jim Crow, claiming that it makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. What the heck was that? Anyway, one of the reasons that this law is apparently so bad is because it will require people to confirm who they are before they can vote absentee, meaning that you will have to use an identification of some sort to tell the state government who you are, and that is seriously all that you need voter ID for, is for absentee ballots. You don't even need to have a voter ID to actually go to the polls and vote at the polling stations. However, the left has still called this law racist, because in their minds, any form of voter ID law is racist. Because according to the left, voter ID laws affect poor communities and communities of color. As according to the University of Chicago Press journalist, there are many reasons to suspect that these laws could harm groups like racial minorities and the poor. It seems to me that the left is saying that minorities are so helpless and they're so poor that there is no way on earth that they can ever get an ID to vote. Now, doesn't that just sound a little bit racist to you? I mean, there are no articles talking about how white voters are affected by voter ID laws, because apparently, according to the left, every single white person has an ID. It is honestly the most racist argument. I mean, we already have a video of Joe Biden saying that black people can't use the internet. Here that is again.
A lot of people don't know how to register. Not everybody in the community, the Hispanic and the African American community, particularly in rural areas distant and or inner city districts know how to get online to determine how to get in line for that COVID vaccine.
Now, this statement can be debunked very, very easily, as the cost of getting an ID is actually very low, and in some states, it is actually free. According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, there are at least 8 states that issue free or discounted IDs to low-income or homeless residents, and at least 10 states waive ID fees for seniors. Along with this, states like Wisconsin, North Dakota, and South Carolina offer free identification. If you are still confused by this notion that IDs are not necessary or that they are racist for some reason, it is important to understand that IDs are not just for voting. They are for so much more. For example, you need an ID when you are buying alcohol to prove that you are 21 and over, opening up a bank account, applying for food stamps, applying for welfare, applying for a job, and even to get on an airplane, you need an ID. If it is racist to show an ID when you are voting, then it would be racist for all of these other things, right? Along with this, the idea that voter ID laws hurt minorities can also be debunked very easily, as there was a very popular study that came out from Stanford that said that voter ID laws are racist and that they affect Hispanic voters the most. Well, there was a follow-up study to that study from Stanford, which according to the left-leaning news site Vox, said, according to researchers at Stanford, Yale, and the University of Pennsylvania, the original study was based on surveys of voters that are extremely unreliable, skewing the results. On top of that, several calculational errors led to even more problems. When the errors are corrected, the follow-up researchers found there's no evidence in the analyzed data that voter ID laws have a statistically significant impact on voter turnout. Now, this is not me calling for voter ID laws. However, the media needs to stop lying, and the left needs to stop lying and saying that minorities are too poor or are too helpless to get an ID, because it is not true. And if we had these voter ID laws in place, then it wouldn't even affect voter turnout, according to statistics. In my personal opinion, I think an ID should be free in every single state, because they are so important. Along with this, if sometime in the future we actually do have voter ID laws, I think that once you register to vote, you get a card that has all your information on it and can be used as identification elsewhere because they are government issued. And if you lose your voter ID, then the state will provide one back to you for free. This means that there'd be no crying, there'd be no complaining about no one having voter ID because everyone would have an ID on them of some sort, whether that be a driver's license, a birth certificate, or something like this voter ID. That may be a stupid idea, but I guess that's why I comment about politics and don't actually make legit policy, which actually might be a good thing. Anyway, even if the whole voter ID thing didn't exist, there would still be problems with this law, according to the left. As according to the law, there is a ban on giving away water or food to voters within a certain distance of the polling site. Once again, the left and the media went absolutely insane and started saying, what can a simple bottle of water do? And they also said things like, these people are standing in line forever and they could literally die. To people that believe this crap, they need to calm down, as this can be debunked very, very easily, because all you have to do is read the law. As the law says, no person shall solicit votes in any manner or by any means or method, nor shall any person distribute or display any campaign material, nor shall any person give, offer to give, or participate in giving of any money or gifts, including but not limited to food and drink. Giving food and giving water to someone can be seen as soliciting their votes, meaning that you're trying to get them to vote for someone that you want to vote for instead of them voting for who they want. For example, if I just so happen to live in Georgia and I pulled out my big ice box cooler filled to the brim with Trump water bottles, and I have my MAGA hat on, and I'm walking up and down the voter line and I'm saying, hey, take a free water bottle. Remember, Donald Trump cares for you. This would be 100% illegal for me to do, because it's not about the food and it's not about the water. It is about stopping people from bribing people to vote for one person over another. And this law doesn't even mean that water bottles are banned, period, because there is a chance that the poll workers will be able to give out water to people and also snacks. just as long as they are not promoting one candidate over the other. Also, it doesn't really make sense to have food during elections. I mean, it makes sense to have food for the poll workers, but if you're just going there to vote, voting takes like 5 minutes. I don't even think you need food. Just eat beforehand. Anyway, all of this water controversy should be easy to understand. But however, we are still getting videos of people saying that they are banning water and food, talking about how this law is absolutely terrible. One of those people just so happens to be Joe Biden, who basically talked about everything that I already debunked in this episode. He talked about water and food being banned, which we just debunked. He talked about how there will be no absentee ballots under strict circumstances, aka photo ID. However, he created a new lie that once again can be debunked very, very fast. As in a recent speech, Joe Biden claimed that Georgia is deciding that they're going to end voting at 5 o'clock, when working people are just getting off work. This was, of course, a huge lie. And even the New York Post, the newspaper that absolutely loves Joe Biden, gave him 4 Pinocchios, which is the highest rank for a lie. The truth can once again be found in the actual Georgia bill, which apparently no one has read. As the bill clearly says, on election day in Georgia, polling places are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you are in line by 7 p.m., you are still allowed to cast your vote. So it looks like to me that nothing in this new law changes those rules. However, it is believed that Joe Biden got confused as it was actually early voting that was changed. As according to the bill, early voting can be conducted beginning at 9 a.m. and ending at 5 p.m. This is opposed to the previous framing that simply noted that early voting shall be conducted during normal business hours. This means that this law is actually giving people more time to vote early, meaning that the law would increase the opportunity for people to vote. The truth is, people need to actually read the law before they jump to stupid conclusions like this. However, sadly, it just gets even more stupid, as now big corporations that have nothing to do with government or voting laws are starting to get involved by getting out of Georgia or condemning the law to please the woke mob. As many people were starting to boycott different Georgia-based companies because they weren't fast enough to call this law terrible and racist. In particular, they called out Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola. Glad to see them in the news again. So the company had to make very generic apology statements, and they usually sound something a little bit like this. We at, insert corporation name here, believe that everyone has a right to vote. And because we don't want our stores or planes to be burned down or mean things to be posted about us on Twitter, this message means we're good, right? So there may have been some things there that I added. However, this is seriously what it seems like they're saying. These companies could actually agree with this law, but because they don't want to be talked bad about on Twitter, they just make a band-aid statement. I wish that one of these corporate leaders would have the willpower to stand up to this woke mob and say, we are a company. We are not brave enough for politics and have absolutely nothing to do with politics. Someone needs to show this woke mob who's boss, because right now, the mob has too much power, and they are driving events that can gain money for the state out. This loss of money comes from Major League Baseball, as every single year they have an all-star game, and for each year they pick a different city to host it. This year it was Atlanta's turn to host it. However, because of the new voting law, Major League Baseball was pressured by even the President of the United States to leave Georgia and play the game somewhere else. I mean, listen to this.
Discussing moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta because Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signed into law a bill passed by the Republican-led state legislature to overhaul how its state elections are run. So, Mr. President, what do you think about the possibility that baseball decides to move their All-Star game out of Atlanta because of this political issue?
I think today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsibly. I would strongly support them doing that.
So all of this was just a lot of pressure on Major League Baseball, so they had to bow to the woke mob and move the All-Star game and the draft out of Georgia and into another state, leaving with them a lot of money, as according to the Daily Wire, moving the game out of Cobb County will cost the region $100 million. Congratulations, Joe Biden, you just turned a blue county red. Along with this, if we are using the narrative of the left, moving the MLB All-Star game out of Georgia is actually racist, as according to the Daily Wire again, Atlanta is 51% black and is the largest black majority metro area in the nation. So let me get this straight. You want to leave a black city for a different city because the media told you that a law is racist. I mean, good job caring about minorities, MLB. Along with this, there's a notion that Georgia is the only state in the union to have terrible, evil, racist voter laws. This, of course, can be debunked very easily, as when the MLB said that they were leaving Georgia, many states said that they wanted the revenue of the game. One of these states was New York. You would think that this would be a match made in heaven, as New York is known for being very left-leaning. However, let's take a different look at their different voting laws, shall we? Well, according to the New York Times, the Empire State still makes it harder to vote than Georgia does. As according to this New York Times article, New York offers 8 fewer days of early voting, and requires a valid excuse and a voter ID to vote absentee. Oh, a voter ID is required to vote absentee? Why is it that no one is talking about these different New York voter laws? I mean, I feel like someone would be out there saying that New York is practicing a new Jim Crow, or that New York's voting laws are so bad that it makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. What was that? I just heard it again. Anyway, for the new racist, terrible Georgia law, they will ask you for a state ID for voting absentee, but lets you out of the requirement if you attest that you do not have one. Along with this, New York has the exact same restrictions for the distribution of food and drink in voting lines that Georgia has. So it looks like to me that New York will not be doing the All-Star game according to the standards set by the left. So the MLB will have to find a different home for their game. What about Denver, Colorado? I mean, I think Colorado would be a great place, as they're sort of in the middle, not very Republican and not very Democratic. Once again, let's take a look at their state's different voting laws, shall we? Well, according to the Colorado Secretary of State website, all voters who vote at the polls must provide identification. If you are voting by mail for the first time, you may also need to provide a photocopy of your identification when you return your ballot. In Georgia, with this new terrible, evil, racist law, you only need photo ID to vote absentee. You don't need a voter ID to vote at the actual polls. Colorado, just like New York, according to the left, is practicing Jim Crow. It's making Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. There it is again. What on earth is that? I just really hope that all of you understand just how ridiculous all of this truly is, as the MLB actually chose Colorado to host the All-Star Game and also the MLB Draft, in a state that ironically has more voting restrictions than Georgia does. So why is the left doing this? Why is there so much lying going on? Why is it that Joe Biden called Jim Crow Jim Eagle? The last one I can't answer, but I can try and answer the other two. The left is trying to save the state of Georgia from falling back into Republican hands. As we saw in the last election, Trump lost Georgia by at least 10,000 votes. So a way to protect their base in Georgia and keep it blue, they must stop any voter laws that may make the election more secure and even more honest. Even though these laws may help the state of Georgia make sure that actual people are voting, the left will continue to call it racist, because this is how they gain and keep their power. The mob will start writing on Twitter about how a corporation didn't say this or that, so we have to ban them, or make them feel so bad that they have to move their All-Star game, or say that a bill is racist even though there are other states in the union that have voter laws that are actually more restrictive than the one in Georgia. These people haven't read the bill and are continuing to spread all of this false information, causing this firestorm to happen, causing people to call the state government racist, and all of this crazy stuff. And this fire could just get even crazier, as if we have a situation where, say, there's a Senate race or a governor's race in Georgia and a Republican wins, the left will instantly say that it was because of these racist laws. This shouldn't be the case, because I believe that the people of Georgia can see through the lies, they can see through the madness, and they can see through just how crazy the left has actually become. And hopefully Georgia will come back home to the Republican Party. In the end, we have learned a lot about this new voter law. We learned that there are so many different lies that we needed to debunk, because we can't let the media, the president, and this woke mob get away with their stupid lies. Now, you can have your own opinion on voter ID laws. You can think that they are wrong for any sort of reason. Maybe some that I didn't even mention in this episode. It is 100% okay to disagree and have a civil discussion with someone. But when there are lies, there has to be someone out there to debunk things. And that's where I come in. With that, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Debunked Docket. And until next time, like my mom always says, be good, be kind, be loving, goodbye.